She can't manage her own money. That's what my father said. At my 30th birthday party, in front of 43 people, he said it into a microphone. He was standing next to a sheet cake. The cake had my name on it in purple frosting. He was holding a champagne glass in his left hand, a folded piece of paper in his right. The paper was a petition for conservatorship over my finances, over the trust my mother left me when she died. He wanted a judge to declare me unfit to manage my own inheritance. At my own birthday party, while the DJ played soft music in the background, while my friends held plates of cake, while my boyfriend stood near the bar with his mouth open. My name is Nora. I'm 30 years old. The man who raised me just told a room full of people that I'm financially incompetent. He did it with the confidence of a man who has never been wrong, or at least a man who has never been told he's wrong, which in my father's case is the same thing. Let me tell you about my father, Richard. He is 61 years old. He has silver hair he gets cut every 3 weeks. He wears pressed khakis and polo shirts. He plays golf on Wednesdays and Saturdays. He has opinions about wine. Strong opinions. The kind that make waiters uncomfortable. He retired at 58 from a mid-level insurance company. He talks about it like he retired from the Pentagon. Strategic decisions, market analysis, complex risk assessments. He sold insurance policies to small businesses. He was good at it. Not great. Good enough to buy a 4-bedroom house in the suburbs. Good enough to lease a new car every 3 years. Good enough to feel like a man in charge, which was the only thing my father truly needed, to feel like he was in charge. He controlled the thermostat. He controlled the television remote. He controlled where we ate dinner on Fridays. He controlled the family calendar. He decided when we went on vacation. He decided where. He decided how long. He decided what we'd do when we got there. And if you disagreed with any of it, he didn't yell. He did something worse. He got quiet. He got still. He withdrew. He became a closed door in a house full of open ones. And you learned very quickly that the price of disagreeing with Richard was the silence that followed, not for hours. For days. My mother learned this first, then my brother Keith, then me. We all learned the same lesson. In different rooms, at different ages, in the same house. When I was 12, I wanted to play soccer. My father wanted me to play piano. He didn't say I couldn't play soccer. He said it would be a waste. He said piano builds discipline. He said soccer was for girls who didn't have direction. I played piano for 6 years. I hated every minute. I was good at it. Because I'm good at things I hate, which is a skill my father never appreciated. Because he didn't know it existed. Because he never asked me what I liked. He told me what I should like, and expected gratitude. When I was 16, I wanted to get a part-time job. My father said no. He said it would distract from school. He said he provided everything I needed. He used the word provided like it meant something noble. Like provision was the same as presence. It's not. You can provide a roof and still be absent from the rooms beneath it. My father was the most present, absent person I've ever known. Always there. Never available. Always watching. Never seeing. My mother was different. Her name was Grace. And she earned it. She was Grace under pressure. Grace in silence. Grace in the way she moved through a room. Like she was careful not to disturb the air. She died when I was 22. Ovarian cancer. Diagnosed in March. Gone by November. 8 months. That's what she got. 8 months to say goodbye to a life she wasn't done with. 8 months to finish every sentence she'd been saving. 8 months to make sure her daughter was protected from everything, including her father. She was a quiet person, not shy. Quiet in the way that certain rivers are quiet. Powerful beneath the surface. Deep in ways you didn't notice until you were in them. She worked as an accountant for 30 years. She handled money the way a gardener handles seeds. Carefully. Patiently. With a plan that stretched far beyond the current season. She saved money my father didn't know about. She invested money he never saw. She built a trust he never understood. And she left it all to me. She also left me something else. Something that wasn't in the trust. Something you couldn't put a dollar value on. She left me the memory of how she lived. I remember watching her pay bills at the kitchen table. Every Sunday night, After my father went upstairs, after Keith went to his room, she'd sit at the table with a calculator, a stack of envelopes, a yellow legal pad. She wrote numbers in columns, neat and precise, like someone tending a garden that nobody else could see. I asked her once what she was doing. I was 13, standing in the kitchen doorway in my pajamas. She looked at me over her reading glasses. "I'm keeping score," she said. "Of what?" I asked. She smiled. "Of everything that matters." I didn't understand then. I understand now. She was building. Every Sunday, every paycheck, every decision. She was building a wall between her daughter and hunger, between her daughter and dependency, between her daughter and a man who confused money with power. She was building me a future, one column of numbers at a time. She never talked about money with my father. Not because she was afraid of him, because she understood something about him. That knowledge is only useful when it belongs to you. That sharing information with someone who uses it as a weapon is not honest. It's ammunition. My mother was honest about everything except her finances, because her finances were the one thing she could control, in a house where everything else was controlled for her. Not to my father, not to my brother Keith, to me. When the attorney read her will, my father's face changed. It did something I'd never seen before. It went completely still. Not angry, not sad. Still. The way a machine looks when it loses power. A sudden absence of everything. Then it came back, and what came back was fury. The trust was worth $470,000. My mother built it over 28 years. One paycheck at a time. One investment at a time. One decision at a time. She never told my father, not because she was hiding it, because she was protecting it. She knew who he was. She loved him anyway. But she knew. She left a letter with the trust. The attorney read it to me privately. After the will reading, in a conference room that smelled like old coffee, with Venetian blinds that didn't close all the way, the letter said this: "Nora, your father is a good man in many ways, but he believes the world belongs to men who talk the loudest. This money is yours, not because he can't be trusted, because I raised you to be trusted. And I want you to know that I noticed. Every Sunday you drove to the hospital. Every night you stayed until visiting hours ended. Every time you held my hand and said nothing, because sometimes nothing is exactly right. Use this money the way I saved it, quietly, wisely, and don't let your father touch it." That last line, "Don't let your father touch it." She underlined it twice. My father did not take this well. He spent the first year after her death being angry at the attorney, then at the trust itself, then at me. Because that's how grief works in men who confuse control with love. They don't grieve the person. They grieve the arrangement. The wife who managed things quietly. The schedule that ran itself. The dinner on the table. The bills paid on time. The invisible labor they never named. Because naming it would mean acknowledging it. And acknowledging it would mean saying thank you. And thank you is a word that requires humility. And humility was never in my father's vocabulary. They cycle through everyone else's fault before they land on their own. And some of them never land. They just keep orbiting. The first Thanksgiving after my mother died was a disaster. My father sat at the head of the table, the same chair, the same plate, the same utensil, but the seat across from him was empty. My mother's chair. Nobody sat in it. Nobody moved it. It just sat there, set with a plate that nobody served. My father carved the turkey. He did it aggressively, like the turkey had done something to him. He talked about football, about the stock market, about a neighbor who was renovating his garage. He talked about everything except the woman who wasn't there. Keith and I sat on either side of the table, eating in silence, listening to our father talk about nothing, while the most important thing in the room was the empty chair. After dinner, my father said something. He said it while loading the dishwasher. "Your mother left things complicated." He said it to the plates, not to me, not to Keith. To the dishes. "She should have told me about the money. We could have planned together. Now I have to sort it out." He said sort it out like it was a chore. Like my mother's life's work was a closet that needed organizing. Like 28 years of careful saving was a mess. And he was the man with the broom. I didn't respond. I dried the plates he handed me. I put them in the cabinet. I went home. I sat in my apartment. I called nobody. I cried into a pillow. Then I called Diane Chen the next morning and asked her to make sure my father could never touch the trust. She said my mother had already handled that. 8 months before she died, while she was still in the hospital, while my father thought she was sleeping, she was on the phone with her attorney, making sure. My brother Keith didn't care about the trust. Keith is 33. He works in software. He lives in a city apartment. He has a dog and a nice girlfriend. He calls me on my birthday. He called our father a lot during the first year, which was Keith's way of handling it, being present by phone, concerned at a distance, loving from a safe remove. That's Keith. He's not a villain. He's just not the kind of person who gets involved until the room is already on fire. And even then, he checks for exits first. My father's approach was different. After the anger phase came the strategy phase. He started asking questions about the trust, about my spending, about my plans. What are you doing with the money? He asked me this at dinner once, at a restaurant with cloth napkins. He was cutting his steak when he said it, methodically, the way he did everything, with a precision that felt like accusation. I'm investing it, I said. In what? Different things. That's not an answer, Nora. It's the answer I'm giving you. He put down his knife. He looked at me the way he looks at contractors. The way he looks at people he's about to negotiate with. Not with warmth. With calculation. Your mother was good with money, he said. You're not your mother. I took a sip of my water. I let the sentence sit between us like a check nobody wanted. Then I said this. You're right. Mom would have finished her steak before picking a fight. He did not laugh. My father doesn't appreciate humor from women. He appreciates obedience packaged as respect. He appreciates compliance presented as gratitude. He appreciates daughters who say yes. And I had been saying no for 8 years. After dinner, he called Keith. I know because Keith texted me 30 minutes later. Dad's worried about the trust. He thinks you might be in over your head. He also thinks the wine list was overpriced. Keith added an emoji, a face with one eye closed, which was his way of saying, I know this is ridiculous, but I'm forwarding the message anyway. My father's concerns about the trust were not genuine. They were strategic. He had been making requests to the trust administrator for 2 years, withdrawal requests. The trust administrator was a woman named Diane Chen. She worked at the firm my mother had selected, a firm that specialized in generational wealth protection. My mother chose it specifically, not the bank where my father had his accounts, not the advisor my father used for his retirement, a separate firm, an independent firm, a firm my father did not control. This was deliberate. My mother did everything deliberately. I first met Diane at my mother's attorney's office. 2 weeks after the funeral, she was wearing a dark blue suit and flat shoes. She had a firm handshake and direct eyes. She didn't say, I'm sorry for your loss. She said, your mother chose you for a reason. Let me show you what she built. She opened a folder. The folder had tabs, color-coded tabs, each one representing a year of investment. 28 tabs, 28 years, 28 years of a woman sitting at a kitchen table, with a calculator and a yellow legal pad, building something her husband didn't know about, something her daughter didn't know about, something that would only reveal itself. After she was gone, Diane explained the trust structure. She explained the investment allocations. She explained the beneficiary protections. She explained the withdrawal restrictions. She explained everything my mother had designed, with the care and precision of someone describing a cathedral. Because that's what it was. A cathedral built from paychecks, stone by stone, year by year. Your mother was one of the smartest clients I've ever worked with. And she never had a financial degree. She had something better. She had patience. Diane introduced me to Vivian 6 months later. When I asked for help managing the trust, she said Vivian was the best. Not the flashiest. Not the one with the nicest office. The one who would treat my mother's money the way my mother had treated it. With respect, Vivian was younger than I expected. 34. Short dark hair. Glasses she was always pushing up her nose. She spoke in numbers the way some people speak in poetry. Fluently. Naturally. With a rhythm that made complex things feel simple. Our first meeting was in a coffee shop, not a boardroom. She bought me a latte and opened her laptop. "Let me show you what you have," she said. "And then let me show you what it can become." She didn't talk down to me. She didn't assume I was stupid. She didn't treat me like a girl with a windfall. She treated me like a client, a capably client. And over the next 2 years, she made me exactly that. Diane flagged the requests. She called me. She said something I'll never forget. "Your father has submitted 7 withdrawal requests in 23 months, each for a different amount, each with a different stated purpose. None of them authorized by you, none of them consistent with each other, and all of them adding up to roughly 60% of the trust." I was standing in my kitchen when she said this. The morning light was coming through the window. I could see dust floating in the air, small particles drifting in the light. That's what the moment felt like seeing something that was always there, that I'd never noticed before. Or maybe I'd noticed and just hadn't looked directly at it. "You can't access it without my signature," I said. "Correct. That's why I'm calling. Because the next step after repeated denials is usually legal." She was right. She was exactly right. My father's next step was legal, but not in the way I expected. He didn't sue. He didn't file a motion. He threw me a birthday party. Let me explain how my father throws a party. He reserves a venue. He makes a guest list. He orders catering. He sends invitations with RSVP cards. He does all of this without asking the person whose birthday it is. He did it for my 21st. At that party, he made a toast about himself, about how hard he'd worked to raise 2 children alone. Alone. My mother had been dead for less than a year, and he'd rewritten the story already. As though she hadn't existed. As though her 20 years of parenting had been his. He did it for my 25th. At that party, he introduced me to a financial advisor he'd chosen, a man in a charcoal suit who smelled like cologne, who kept calling me honey, who handed me a business card and said I should call. I didn't call. I called Diane instead. And now he was doing it for my 30th. Each time it was less about celebration and more about production. My father produces events the way certain directors produce films. The audience matters more than the actors. The appearance matters more than the experience. He wants people to see him being generous, being in charge, being the father who throws the party. I knew about the party 3 weeks in advance. Keith told me, "Dad's planning something for your 30th. He seems really into it. He rented the garden room at that event space downtown, the one with the string lights." I should have been suspicious. A man who'd been fighting me over money for 2 years suddenly wanted to throw me a party. But I wanted to believe something simpler. I wanted to believe my father was trying, that he'd turned a corner, that he missed his daughter, that the party was an olive branch, not a stage. James said I should be careful. He said it gently, the way James says everything, like someone placing a glass on a table, making sure it doesn't break. "I don't want to tell you what to think," he said, "but your dad hasn't been kind to you in 2 years. People don't become kind because they rent a venue." He was right. I knew he was right. But knowing and feeling are different things. Knowing lives in your head, feeling lives in your chest. And in my chest, there was still a girl who wanted her father to throw her a birthday party. Not because she needed one, because she needed him to want to throw one. For the right reasons. Just once. The day of the party, I wore a green dress. The one my mother would have liked. Simple. No sequins. No drama. Just a clean line and a good cut. My mother believed clothes should frame you, not announce you. James picked me up at 6. He was wearing a jacket and a tie. He didn't own many ties. This was the gray one. The one he wore to school events. "You look great," he said. "You look like you own a tie," I said. He laughed. The kind of laugh that fills a car, that makes the drive shorter. That makes you forget what you're driving toward. I was wrong. The party was on a Saturday evening. The venue was a renovated warehouse. Exposed brick, Edison bulbs, long tables with white tablecloths, floral centerpieces that someone had clearly spent too much money on. My father met me at the entrance. He was wearing a blue blazer. He hugged me. It was brief and practiced. The hug of a man who hugs because it's expected. "Happy birthday, sweetheart." "Thank you, Dad." A lot of people came. He said it like a review. Like attendance was a metric. Like the party's success was already determined by the head count. I walked in and saw the room. It was bigger than I expected. The ceiling was high. The lights were warm. There were candles on every table. Tall white candles in glass holders. The kind that make everything look more important than it is. The kind that turn a warehouse into a stage. My father understood staging. He understood lighting. He understood the difference between a room and a setting. This was a setting. Something was going to happen here. I could feel it the way you feel rain before it falls. The air was heavy. The smiles were just slightly too wide. There were people I knew, friends from work. My coworker Elena was near the appetizers. She was the one who'd covered for me when I closed the duplex. She waved. I waved back. Friends from college? My boyfriend James was near the bar. He smiled. He had kind eyes and nervous hands. He was holding a beer he hadn't opened. Keith was in the corner talking to someone's husband. There were also people I didn't recognize. Older people, friends of my father's, golf partners, insurance colleagues, people who had known my mother, people who had attended her funeral, people my father had assembled, like a jury. And there was one person I almost didn't notice. A woman at a table near the back. Short dark hair, glasses, business casual. She was eating a piece of bread and checking her phone. Her name was Vivian Park. She was my financial advisor, the one who managed the trust. Diane had introduced us 2 years ago. Vivian had helped me make every investment decision since. She'd just closed a real estate deal for me 3 weeks earlier. A duplex in a growing neighborhood. My first property investment, it had been Vivian's idea. She'd walked me through the numbers, the mortgage structure, the rental projections, the tax advantages. She taught me how money works. Not in theory, in practice. The way a mechanic teaches you about engines. Not by giving you a manual, by opening the hood, by pointing at the parts, by letting you turn the wrench yourself, by standing next to you, not behind you, not in front of you, next to you, where a teacher stands. When they want you to learn, not when they want you to follow. She made me competent, which is the opposite of what my father wanted. I remember the first time Vivian called me about an opportunity. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I was at my desk at work. She said there was a duplex for sale in a growing area. The numbers work, she said, but I need you to understand why they work, not just trust me. She spent 45 minutes on the phone, explaining mortgage rates, explaining rental yield, explaining what cap rate means, explaining why location matters more than price. I took notes on the back of an envelope. Then I went home and made a spreadsheet. My first real spreadsheet, with formulas, with projections, with a tab labeled what mom would ask, because that's how I made decisions. By imagining my mother at the kitchen table, with her calculator, with her yellow legal pad, asking the questions I hadn't thought of. The duplex closed in 32 days. Vivian said that was fast. I said I had a good teacher. She said I had a good instinct. I said my mother would have checked the plumbing first. Vivian laughed. Your mother would have bought the whole block. That was the moment I realized something. That Vivian wasn't just managing my money. She was finishing what my mother started. Teaching me to stand on my own. With numbers instead of words. With spreadsheets instead of letters. But with the same quiet intention. Vivian was at the party because I'd invited her. She was my advisor and she'd become something like a friend. Not a close friend. A professional friend. The kind where you have dinner once a quarter. And she tells you your portfolio is up 12%. And you tell her your father is still requesting withdrawals. And she says something sharp and precise. Like that's a pattern, not a phase. And you realize she's right. I didn't know why my father had rented a microphone. That was the first sign I missed. The second sign was the sheet cake. Not a regular cake. A sheet cake. The kind you get for office parties. Large enough for 40 people. Impersonal by design. Functional. Like a PowerPoint slide in frosting form. The third sign was the folded paper in his jacket pocket. I saw it when he hugged me. The corner was sticking out. Crisp white paper, legal-sized. Folded twice. At 8:30, my father walked to the front of the room. He picked up the microphone. He tapped it twice. The room went quiet. The way rooms go quiet when someone demands attention. Not because they've earned it, because they've assumed it. I want to thank everyone for coming tonight. My daughter is 30 years old. Time flies. He smiled. The smile of a man who's rehearsed this. Grace would have been proud. He paused on my mother's name. Used it like a tool. Like a key to unlock the room's sympathy. As many of you know, Grace left some financial assets behind. A trust. Significant resources that she wanted to provide for Nora's future. I felt something shift in my stomach. A heaviness. The kind you feel before a car accident. When your body knows something your mind hasn't processed yet. I've spent the last few years watching, and I've become concerned. Nora is a wonderful girl. He called me a girl. At my 30th birthday, in front of 43 people, but she doesn't have the experience. She doesn't have the training. She can't manage her own money. The room was silent. Not a comfortable silence. The silence of people who know they're watching something wrong, but don't know how to stop it. Which is why I've consulted with an attorney. He pulled out the folded paper, opened it with one hand. The practiced gesture of a man who'd rehearsed this too. I'm filing for a limited conservatorship. Over the trust, to protect what Grace built. To protect my daughter from her own decisions. He said protect like it meant something clean. Something kind. But protection and control share the same shape. The way a fence shares a shape with a wall. James put down his beer. Keith was staring at the floor. My friends were looking at each other. The golf partners were nodding. As though this made sense. As though this was reasonable. As though declaring your daughter incompetent. At her own birthday party. Was a normal Tuesday. I didn't move. I was standing near the center of the room. Holding a glass of wine. The glass was sweating. The wine was warm. My hands were steady. Steady in the way of people who have been expecting something. Without knowing what it would be. Then someone started laughing. Not a mean laugh. Not a nervous laugh. The laugh of someone who has heard something genuinely absurd. The way you laugh when someone says the earth is flat. Or that the check is in the mail. Or that a woman who just closed a 6-figure deal can't manage money. It was Vivian. She was still at her table. She'd put down her phone. She was covering her mouth. But the laugh was coming through. Sharp and clear and inappropriate. Perfectly inappropriate. My father looked at her. The way a teacher looks at a student who spoke out of turn. With irritation and authority. Excuse me. Vivian stood up. She was shorter than I remembered. She was wearing flat shoes and a gray blazer. She looked like an accountant. She was an accountant. A very good one. I'm sorry, she said. I don't mean to interrupt. But I'm laughing because I'm in the room. I don't understand, my father said. My name is Vivian Park. I'm a certified financial planner. I manage Nora's trust. The room shifted. Not physically, but the air changed. The way air changes before a storm. When the pressure drops and you feel it in your ears. Nora retained me 2 years ago. Since then, her portfolio has grown by 14%. She completed a real estate acquisition last month. A duplex. Cash flow positive in the first quarter. She negotiated the terms herself. My father's face did the thing again. The power loss thing. The sudden absence. She also has a diversified equity position. An emergency fund representing 9 months of expenses. And a Roth conversion strategy I frankly wish more of my clients understood. Vivian paused. She pushed her glasses up with one finger. So when you say she can't manage money, I'm curious what metric you're using. Because by every standard I know, she's outperforming most people in this room. Including, with respect, you. The silence that followed was extraordinary. The kind of silence that has weight and texture. Like snow falling on a battlefield. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The DJ had stopped the music. Whether intentionally or accidentally, I never found out. One of my father's golf partners cleared his throat. Another one looked at his wife. His wife was already looking at me. With something that might have been respect. Or pity. Or the recognition of a woman who'd seen this before. In her own kitchen. With her own husband. With her own money. A man near the bar put down his drink. He was one of my father's golf partners. I'd met him once at a Christmas party. He leaned over to his wife and whispered something. She shook her head. Slowly. The way you shake your head when confirmation arrives. When something you suspected becomes something you know. One of my college friends was standing near the door. She had her hand over her mouth, not from shock, from the effort of not saying something. She caught my eye. She mouthed 2 words. I'm sorry, but she didn't need to be sorry. She needed to witness. And she did. A man I didn't know walked toward the exit, then stopped, then turned around, then walked back, as if leaving felt wrong, but staying felt worse. He chose staying. People usually do. When the truth is in the room, you want to see what happens next. Keith stepped forward. He looked at our father. He said 1 word. Dad. Just that. Just the word. But he said it the way you say someone's name. When they've gone too far. When the room knows it. When everyone is waiting for someone to pull them back. My father didn't respond to Keith. He looked at Vivian. Then at me. Then at the paper in his hand. The petition. The conservatorship petition. He folded it back up. Slowly. The way you fold something you know is useless now. James came over. He stood next to me. He didn't say anything. He put his hand on the small of my back. Not possessively. Protectively. There's a difference. Some men know the difference. James was one of them. I think we should cut the cake, I said. I said it clearly. Into the silence. Like a door opening. It's my birthday. And there's a sheet cake with my name on it. And I haven't eaten since lunch. Somebody laughed. Then somebody else. Then the room exhaled. The way rooms do when someone gives them permission. Permission to move on. Permission to breathe. The DJ started the music again. People began talking. Quietly at first. Then normally. The way water returns to a lake after a stone has been thrown. My father left. He didn't say goodbye. He walked out the side door. The one near the coat check. I watched him go. His shoulders were square. His walk was controlled. He didn't look back. He got in his car, a Silversun, the one he kept meticulously clean. He drove away. And I felt something I didn't expect. Not anger. Not triumph. Sadness. The particular sadness of watching your father become smaller. Not physically, in every other way. Vivian came over after he left. She was holding a plate of cake. I hope that was okay, she said. I didn't plan it. I just heard him say you can't manage money. And I manage your money. And you can definitely manage money. It was more than okay, I said. For what it's worth, she said. That duplex you closed? Most of my clients twice your age. Wouldn't have done the due diligence you did. Your mother would have been proud. I didn't cry. I don't cry in public. My mother taught me that. Not because crying is weak. Because some moments deserve your private attention. Later. When the room is empty and the cake is gone. And you're sitting on your kitchen floor, eating leftover frosting from the container. That's when you cry. And that's okay. The next morning was a Sunday. I woke up at 7. James was still asleep. I made coffee. I sat at the kitchen table. The morning light was doing the same thing. Coming through the window, making the dust visible. Floating particles in golden light. The same kitchen where Diane had called me about the withdrawal requests. The same table where I'd signed the paperwork for the duplex. The same chair where I'd read my mother's letter for the first time. I read it again that morning. Don't let your father touch it. Underlined twice. She knew. She always knew. 28 years of marriage taught her things about my father. Things she never said out loud. Things she put in letters instead. Because letters are patient. Letters wait. Letters don't argue. They just sit there. Being true. Being available. Being exactly what you need. Exactly when you need it. I thought about what she would say. If she'd been at the party. If she'd been standing in that room, watching her husband announce to 43 people that their daughter was incompetent. I think she would have been quiet. She wouldn't have yelled. She wouldn't have cried. She would have walked to the front of the room. Stood next to him, looked at the crowd, and said something devastating, something short, something that contained 28 years of patience. Something like, I built that trust, and I built the woman who manages it. Any questions? But she wasn't there. She was in a letter, underlined twice, which was her way of being there, from a distance, from the past, from the only place she could still reach. I folded the letter, put it back in its envelope. The envelope smelled like nothing. It used to smell like her perfume. That faded years ago. But the words didn't fade. Words don't fade the way perfume does. Words get stronger. The further you get from the person who wrote them, the more you need them, the louder they become. James woke up at 8. He came into the kitchen. He was wearing a t-shirt and boxers. His hair was doing something unusual. He looked at me. He looked at the letter on the table. He didn't ask about it. He poured himself coffee. He sat down across from me. That was something, he said. Last night. Your dad really went for it. He's been building to that for 2 years, I said. I know. He took a sip. Vivian was incredible. She was just telling the truth. Yeah. He put his mug down. That's what made it incredible. James is a teacher. He teaches 8th grade science. He makes $43,000 a year. He drives a 10-year-old car. He has student loans. He is nothing my father respects. My father respects income brackets, net worth, golf handicaps, the square footage of your house. James doesn't register on any of those scales, but he registers on mine, in ways my father will never understand, ways that have nothing to do with money. We met at a bookstore. He was looking at a book about the solar system. I was looking at a book about real estate. We were in the same aisle. Science and business are closer together than you'd think. He said something about Jupiter having 67 moons. I said something about interest rates. He laughed. I laughed. He asked me if I wanted coffee. I said only if he could explain Jupiter's moons. He could, in detail, with enthusiasm. The kind of enthusiasm that makes you forget you're in a bookstore and remember that the world has people in it who get excited about moons, who don't care about golf handicaps, who don't measure people by their square footage. On our 3rd date, I told him about my mother, about the trust, about my father, about the withdrawal requests. He listened. He didn't interrupt. He didn't offer solutions. He didn't say, "That's terrible." He said, "She sounds amazing," meaning my mother, not the situation. He focused on the person, not the problem. That's when I knew, not that I would marry him, but that he was worth knowing, that he was the kind of man my mother would have checked, and then approved, in that order. My father met James once, at a restaurant. My father ordered a steak. James ordered pasta. My father asked what James did for a living. James said he taught 8th grade science. My father paused. The way you pause when someone tells you something disappointing. That's noble, my father said. He said noble the way people say interesting, when they mean the opposite. James smiled. The kids are great, he said. They're learning about black holes this week. Did you know a black hole can be smaller than an atom and still contain the mass of a mountain? My father had no response to this, because my father doesn't know what to do with wonder. He only knows what to do with status. And wonder doesn't come with a salary. After dinner, my father called me. He seems nice, he said. He is nice, but he's a teacher. Yes, teachers don't make money, Nora. Dad, I'm just saying. You're just saying what you always say. That money is the only thing that matters. I didn't say that. You never say it. You just live it. He hung up. He always hangs up when I'm right. It's his tell. The click of the phone. The sound of retreat. That Monday, I called Diane. She answered on the 2nd ring. I heard about the party, she said. Vivian told me. I want you to know something. Your father's petition won't get anywhere. Why? Because conservatorship requires evidence of incapacity. He doesn't have any. In fact, the evidence goes the other way. Your financial record is excellent. Your trust is growing. You have documented investment decisions, professional advisory relationships, tax returns that show disciplined management. A judge would look at his petition, then look at your track record, and the petition would be dismissed, probably before lunch. So he can't do anything? He can file. Anyone can file. But filing and winning are different things. The filing might embarrass him more than it embarrasses you. I thought about that. About my father filing a legal petition, claiming his 30-year-old daughter was incompetent, while her portfolio outperformed his retirement account, while she owned a rental property, while his withdrawal request sat in a pile, each one denied, each one documented, each one evidence, not of my incapacity, of his Diane, I said. If he files, can those withdrawal requests be submitted as evidence? There was a pause. The kind of pause that contains a smile. Yes, they can. 7 requests in 23 months, each denied, each showing an attempt to access funds he has no right to. A judge would find that very interesting. Interesting how? Interesting in the sense that a man claiming his daughter can't manage money has been repeatedly trying to take her money. That's not concern. That's a conflict of interest. And judges notice conflicts of interest, the way dogs notice mailmen. I liked Diane. I liked her metaphors. I liked that she spoke the truth. The way a compass points north, automatically, without effort, without apology. I liked that my mother had chosen her. Specifically her. Not a man in a corner office. Not someone my father would have selected. Not someone who would have been impressed by silver hair. And golf stories, and the confident voice of a man who sells insurance. A woman who compared judges to dogs and mailmen. A woman who saw through petitions, the way radiologists see through skin, looking for what's broken underneath. A woman who protected what my mother built, with the same quiet ferocity my mother had used to build it. My mother chose women. She chose Diane. She chose a firm run by women. She chose a firm run by women. She chose investments managed by women. Not because men couldn't do the work, because she'd spent 28 years watching a man who believed he could do everything and couldn't do the one thing that mattered. Listen, my father did file the petition. 2 weeks after the birthday party, on a Wednesday morning, the same day I was scheduled to close on a second property, a small commercial space. A bakery had leased it for 11 years. The owner was retiring. Vivian found the listing. She said the numbers were exceptional. I believed her. I signed the paperwork at 10 in the morning. At 10:15, my phone buzzed. A text from Keith. Dad filed. Something about the trust. Are you okay? I'm great. I typed back. I just bought a building. Keith sent the one eye emoji again. Then a second one. Then a thumbs up, which was Keith at maximum emotional expression. My father's petition was reviewed by a judge named Hollister. Judge Hollister was in her late 50s. She had short gray hair and reading glasses. She had served on the family court bench for 17 years. She had seen conservatorship petitions before, most of them legitimate. Elderly parents with genuine decline. Adults with documented disabilities. People who truly needed protection. My father's petition was not one of those. The hearing was on a Tuesday morning. I wore a navy blazer and slacks. I looked like what I was. A competent adult. My father wore a suit. He looked like what he was. A man who confused control with concern. A man who dressed for the occasion he wanted. Not the occasion that was happening. Diane was there. Vivian was there. Keith was not. Keith had called me the night before. I can't take sides, he said. He's our dad. I know this is hard. It is hard, I said. But not for the reasons you think. James was there. In the second row, wearing his one good blazer, the one he wore to parent-teacher conferences. He nodded when I looked at him. A small nod. The kind that says, I'm here. Not the kind that says, good luck. The kind that says, you don't need luck. My father's attorney presented the petition. He was a man in a brown suit. He spoke in the measured tone of someone being paid by the hour. He used words like safeguard and prudent management. He described my mother's trust as substantial assets. He described me as young and potentially vulnerable. He did not mention my portfolio performance. He did not mention the duplex. He did not mention the commercial property. He did not mention that his client, my father, had submitted 7 unauthorized withdrawal requests, each denied, each documented. He built a case out of absence, out of what wasn't there, no evidence of incompetence, because there was none. No evidence of financial mismanagement, because there was none. Just a father's concern, packaged in legal language, delivered in a measured tone, the way poison is sometimes delivered in a clean glass. Judge Hollister listened. She wrote something on a notepad. She looked up once, at me, then at my father, then back at the attorney. The way a person looks at something they've seen before. Many times before, in this same room, from this same bench, the expression of someone who recognizes a pattern. long before it finishes playing out. Then it was our turn. Diane stood up. She opened a folder, a thin folder, not because she had little evidence, because she'd organized it perfectly, the way my mother would have. 3 pages, each one devastating. Page 1, my portfolio performance. 14% growth, 2 property acquisitions, a retirement savings rate above national average, a clean tax history, professional advisory relationship, documented. Page 2, my father's withdrawal requests. 7 of them, each with a date, each with an amount, each with a stated reason, each denied. Total requested, $280, $3,000, 60% of the trust, from a man who claimed he was concerned about management, not access. Page 3, a letter. My mother's letter, the one from the trust, the one with the underlined sentence, "Don't let your father touch it." Diane read it aloud. She read it the way it deserved to be read. Quietly, clearly, without drama, because the words didn't need drama. They had truth. And truth is louder than volume. Judge Hollister looked at the letter. She looked at the withdrawal request. She looked at my father. She removed her reading glasses. She placed them on the desk, the gesture of someone who wants to see clearly, without anything in the way. "Mr. Callahan," she said my father's last name. "I've reviewed the petition. I've reviewed the respondent's financial records. And I've reviewed these withdrawal requests." She paused. "Your daughter's portfolio is well managed. Her investments are sound. Her advisory relationship is documented and professional. There is no evidence of incapacity. There is no evidence of financial distress. There is no evidence that supports this petition." Another pause. "What I do see is a pattern of unauthorized access attempts by the petitioner. That's you. 7 requests to withdraw funds from a trust you are not a beneficiary of. That is not concern. That is interference." My father's attorney shifted in his chair. My father did not move. His face was doing the power loss thing again. The absence. The blank. "This petition is denied. And I'm going to recommend something. I recommend the trust administrator flag any future contact from you regarding this trust as unwelcome." She put her glasses back on. "This matter is closed." The whole thing took 22 minutes. I counted. Not on purpose. I noticed the clock when we entered, 9:14. And I noticed it when we left, 9:36. 22 minutes. For my father to file a petition, present his case, and have it dismissed with a recommendation that he not contact the trust again. My father's attorney stood up quickly. He gathered his papers. He didn't make eye contact with anyone. He left the courtroom first, walking fast. The walk of a man who wants distance from a loss that wasn't his but feels like his anyway. My father stood more slowly. He buttoned his jacket. He adjusted his cuffs. He performed the motions of a composed man. But his hands were different. They were trembling. Not a lot. Just at the fingertips. The way a bridge trembles before you notice the cracks. He walked past me. He didn't stop. He didn't look. He walked through the double doors. Into the hallway, into the building, into the parking lot, into his Silversun, and away. 22 minutes. That's less time than it takes to parallel park. In my father's defense, he was never good at parking either. Outside the courthouse, Diane turned to me. She was holding her folder, her thin, devastating folder. "Your mother chose well," she said, "both in the trust structure and in you." I almost cried, but I didn't. Not yet. James was waiting on the courthouse steps. He had 2 coffees. He'd gone to the shop across the street during the hearing. He handed me one. "How'd it go?" 22 minutes, I said. "That's fast. That's what happens when you file a petition against someone with a better portfolio than yours." He smiled. The specific smile of a man who loves a woman and knows she doesn't need saving, but brought her coffee anyway. Because coffee is always useful, even when justice has already been served. My father called me that evening. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail. His voice was controlled. The way it always is. "Nora, I want you to know this wasn't about money. It was about your mother's wishes. I was trying to honor her." I listened to it twice. Then I saved it. Because voicemails are evidence. And because it was a lie I wanted to remember. Not because it hurt, because it revealed. It revealed that my father believed his own version. A version where he was the protector, the guardian, the reasonable man, surrounded by unreasonable women, who refused to let him help. He had constructed an entire narrative in which he was the hero, the misunderstood father, the man who tried, who did his best, who loved his daughter in the only way he knew how, which happened to look exactly like control and sounded exactly like criticism and felt exactly like a locked door, but was love. He was sure of it, the way he was sure of everything, completely, without evidence, without doubt, without the ability to consider that he might be the problem. My mother understood this about him. She understood it for 28 years. She loved him through it. She worked around it. She built something despite it. And she made sure that when she was gone, the thing she built would survive him. 3 months after the hearing, I got a call from Keith. He wanted to have lunch. This was unusual. Keith doesn't do lunch. Keith does texting and occasional phone calls. Lunch is advanced, Keith. Lunch means something. We met at a sandwich place near his office. He ordered a turkey club. I ordered soup. He was fidgeting with his napkin, folding it, refolding it. The way people do when they're about to say something difficult. I should have been there, he said. At the hearing. Yes. I told myself I was being neutral. But there's no neutral here. Dad tried to take your money. At your birthday party. In front of everyone. Neutral isn't a position. It's a hiding place. I put down my spoon. He was looking at his sandwich. Not eating it. Just looking. The way you look at something when you're not really seeing it. When you're seeing something else entirely. Mom would have been disappointed in me, he said. Mom would have been disappointed you didn't call sooner, I said. But she also would have made you a sandwich. And told you the next right thing. What's the next right thing? You already did it. You're sitting here. Keith picked up his sandwich. He took a bite. He chewed slowly. Dad called me, he said. After the hearing, he said the judge was biased. He said Diane manipulated the process. He said your financial advisor was unprofessional. He had an explanation for everything. Except the 7 withdrawal requests. He didn't mention those. He wouldn't. I'm not going to be neutral anymore, Keith said. I don't know what that looks like yet, but I'm not hiding. That's enough, I said. For now. We finished lunch. He paid, which was the most expensive thing Keith had done for me in years. Not because of the cost, because of what it meant. That he showed up, that he stayed, that he ate the whole sandwich. 2 weeks after the lunch, Keith did something unexpected. He called our father. He told me about it afterward, in a voice that sounded different, older, steadier, the voice of a man who has decided to stop being comfortable. I told him he was wrong, Keith said. About the party, about the petition, about all of it. What did he say? He said I didn't understand. He said Mom would have wanted him involved. He said the trust was family money. It's not. I know. I told him that. I told him Mom left it to you for a reason. He got quiet. The bad quiet. The one where you know he's not listening. He's just waiting for you to stop talking. So he can say what he was going to say anyway. What did he say? He said I was being influenced. By you. He said you'd turned me against him. That's not true. I know. He turned himself. 1 withdrawal request at a time. Keith paused. I could hear him breathing. I told him something else, he said. I told him I wished he'd been different. Not a different person. Just different with us. More like Mom. Less like a manager. How'd that go? He hung up. He always hangs up. I know, I said. It's the family tell. Keith laughed. A tired laugh. But a real one. The laugh of someone who finally said the thing. That needed saying, even though it changed nothing. Even though our father would keep being our father. Some things you say for yourself. Not for the person who needs to hear them. For the person who needs to say them. A year passed. Then another. Then another. 3 years. 1,000 mornings of coffee in the same kitchen. 1,000 moments of dust floating in golden light. 1,000 small decisions that added up to a life. A life my mother designed. And I built, board by board, number by number, decision by decision. I'm 33 now. The trust is worth $612,000, up from $470,000. Vivian and I meet quarterly. She brings spreadsheets. I bring questions. We both bring coffee. The duplex is fully leased. The commercial space generates steady income. I've started looking at a third property, a small office building near the university. Vivian says the cap rate is excellent. I've learned what a cap rate is. I've learned what leverage means. I've learned the difference between a good deal and a great one. I've learned that patience is an investment strategy. That my mother understood this at 25. And it took me until 30 to catch up. But I caught up. My mother would have been proud of that. She would have also asked me to explain it. Then she would have nodded. Then she would have said something like this. That sounds right. But let me check the numbers, because that's who she was. Trust and verify. Love and protect. Save and don't tell your husband. My father and I don't speak often. He calls on holidays. I answer sometimes. We talk about weather and food. We do not talk about the trust. We do not talk about the birthday party. We do not talk about the petition. We do not talk about the 7 withdrawal requests. We talk about things that float on the surface, because the things underneath are too heavy, and neither of us wants to go diving. Not yet. Maybe not ever. That's okay. Some relationships exist at a certain depth. Going deeper would require something my father doesn't have. Not courage. Not intelligence. Willingness. The willingness to be wrong. To say, I was wrong. 3 words my father has never said. In 61 years, 3 words that would cost him nothing. And give him everything. But he doesn't see it that way. He sees apology as defeat. And defeat as death. So he stays on the surface, where conversations are safe, where nobody drowns, where nobody swims either. James and I got engaged 6 months ago. He proposed in the kitchen. No microphone. No sheet cake. No audience of 43. Just him, standing by the coffee maker, holding a ring box, looking terrified. I know I'm not what your father wanted, he said, but I'm what your mother would have liked. That's when I cried. Finally, standing in my kitchen, in my socks, at 8 in the morning, with the dust floating in the morning light, and a man who understood that the best proposal isn't about the ring. It's about knowing whose opinion actually matters. Keith was the first person I told. He sent 3 emojis, a ring, a heart, the one eye face. Then he called. James is a good guy, he said. Dad will hate it, but Dad hates most things that aren't his idea. That's true. Mom would have loved him. I know. She would have checked his credit score, though. She absolutely would have. She would have run a background check. She would have called his references. She would have asked him his 5-year plan. James doesn't have a 5-year plan. Good. 5-year plans are for people who don't know what they want. James knows what he wants. He wants you. That's a better plan than most. We laughed. The kind of laugh that sounds like relief and remembering, and the quiet joy of people who survived something and found each other on the other side. My mother's letter sits in a frame now. On the wall of my office, the office in the commercial building I bought, I rented out most of the space, but I kept one room. A small room with a window, a desk, a plant. The letter, in a frame I bought at a flea market. A simple wooden frame. Oak, nothing fancy. My mother would have approved. She didn't like fancy. She liked real. She liked things that lasted. Things that didn't need to impress anyone. Things that just were. Solid. True. Present. Sometimes I sit at that desk, and I look at the letter, and I talk to her. Not out loud. In my head, the way you talk to someone who isn't there anymore, but never left. I tell her about the properties. About Vivian. About James. About Keith. About the numbers in the spreadsheets. That started as her numbers, and became mine. I tell her about the morning light. About the dust floating in the kitchen. About the coffee I drink in the same chair, where she used to sit with her calculator. I tell her everything, and she says nothing back, but I can hear her anyway. In the margins of the letter, in the space between the words, in the underline beneath the last sentence, 2 lines Still there. Still true. This money is yours. Use it the way I saved it. Quietly. Wisely. And don't let your father touch it. Every time I read it, I hear her voice. Calm and clear and certain. The voice of a woman who knew things. Things about money. Things about men. Things about the particular kind of love that protects even after you're gone. If you've ever been told you can't, by someone who should have told you that you could, then you know how this feels. And if you haven't found your version of Vivian yet, or your version of Diane, or your version of the letter in the drawer, I hope you find it. Before you need it. The way my mother hoped I'd find it. Before she was gone. Because sometimes the strongest thing a woman can do is prove someone wrong, quietly, with compound interest and a spreadsheet. There are more stories like this one. You're welcome to stay as long as you'd like.